Hi everyone. I finished the Harry and Klinger text, Why Are So Many Minority Students in Special Education? And the first point that really made an impression on me had to do with the discussion surrounding the hidden curriculum in schools and cultural hegemony. In Chapter 2, titled School Structure, Institutional Bias, and Individual Agency, on page 30 it stated, researchers such as Kozel, Oakes, and Onion have provided portraits of schooling that demonstrate social reproduction in action through inequitable funding patterns, institutionalized low expectations resulting from tracking, and the provision of differential curricula according to the social class level of students. Additionally, in Chapter 3, titled Cultural Consonance, Dissonance, and the Nuances of Racism, they discuss the concept of cultural hegemony and how the practices and values of the dominant culture are perpetuated in schools. Harry and Klinger concluded that they couldn't really get any clear-cut answer about how racial bias contributes to the ethnic disproportionality in special education. However, I think that it's sort of a necessary backdrop for the context of the rest of the book. I think that um, the point about schools reproducing this status quo as opposed to providing students with opportunities for social mobility definitely exists, and it can give context to a lot of the following discussions in the book that have to do with teacher quality, who has access to what kind of teachers, what kinds of assumptions are schools making about families, and the overall process of referral. Another point of interest for me relates to the assumptions which school personnel make about families, and this was discussed in Chapter 5, which is titled The Construction of Family Identity, Stereotypes, and Cultural Capital. The chapter described several case studies where negative assumptions about families were very common and they impacted the decisions that were made about the student. On page 93, it stated, the two preceding cases point to the power of racial and socioeconomic stereotypes to exacerbate the difficulties of children whose families lack the cultural capital valued by schools. So, although there might certainly be family specific factors that are significant, the author's study really pointed out how much schools ignore the school-based risks. We overlook what kinds of teachers students have, what kinds of classroom environments they're in, as well as what the referral process looks like. And all of this can lead to that further sort of cloud the referral process itself and lead to these misidentified um, disabilities. So I think that schools really do need to focus more on culturally relevant practices and work on engaging families and really making partnerships with the families so that they're involved in the decision-making process. A final point of interest is discussed in Chapter 6 at the conference table, the discourse of identity construction. And this chapter talked about many competing factors related to the eligibility decisions, such as the impressions of the family, the classroom environment, the definitions and criteria for disability and how they are different, and the psychologist philosophical positions. In the conclusion of that chapter, Harry and Klinger describe how these competing models can really impact the outcomes. And this, to me, is really a frustrating point because we know that special education ideally is meant to be individualized and tailored to fit the needs of the student, but in reality, oftentimes I think that teachers and clinicians do feel very restrained by a system that is more standardized. So this is mentioned again on page 181. It says, it was evident that the general approach to special education was that the child was expected to fit the program rather than the other way around. So I think that, the risk is that we end up with more these special ed programs that are very generic and not individualized. So they're really ineffective for what their intended purpose is. My overall impression of the book is really positive. I don't necessarily think that any of the research was particularly surprising, but I do think it's very shocking that we don't ever talk about any of these huge issues, and it's really unfortunate because there's a lot of important discussions that do surround these topics, And that being said, I will look forward to being tagged. Thank you.